The ash fell like snow. That's what I remember most about the days after the war ended. Not the silence, though that was there too, heavy and suffocating. Not the emptiness of cities that used to hum with life, but the ash, grey and fine, drifting down from a sky that hadn't been blue in 3 years. It settled on everything, on the broken towers, on the skeletal remains of what used to be homes, on my skin when I pulled back my hood to feel something other than the recycled air of my suit. My name is Ren. I'm Thaleri, or I was before that stopped meaning anything. I'd been a medic during the war, patched up soldiers, saved lives when I could, watched them die when I couldn't. Standard military service, except there was nothing standard about a war that ended with both sides losing. The humans called it the War of First Contact. We called it the Purge. Neither name was wrong. I walked through what remained of Halven Reach, a border settlement that had changed hands 6 times during the conflict. Now it belonged to no one, just ruins and radiation and ash that never stopped falling. I didn't have a destination. I hadn't had one for weeks, just kept moving because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering, and remembering meant... I stopped. Ahead, in the wreckage of what used to be a residential district, something blinked, faint, red, rhythmic, a distress beacon. My first instinct was to turn around. Beacons meant survivors, survivors meant complications, and I'd had enough complications to last whatever remained of my life. But I stood there, watching that red light pulse in the grey landscape, and something made me curious. Or maybe it was guilt. It's hard to tell the difference anymore. The beacon was human design. I recognized the frequency pattern, had seen enough of them during the war, usually attached to soldiers bleeding out in the mud while their equipment screamed for help that never came. I should have walked away. My people were gone, wiped out in the final offensive when humanity decided that negotiation was weakness and total victory was the only acceptable outcome. The Thaleri homeworld was a crater now. Our colonies scattered and silent, our military decimated. And here I was, standing in the ruins, looking at a human distress signal. I started walking toward it. The source wasn't hard to find. A fighter craft, human make, probably reconnaissance, had crashed into what used to be a commercial building. The impact had collapsed 3 floors. The fighter was buried in the rubble, nose down, its hull cracked open like an egg. The beacon was attached to the pilot's seat, still blinking, still calling. I climbed over twisted metal and broken concrete, my movements careful. Radiation levels were high here, not immediately lethal, but prolonged exposure would be unpleasant. The cockpit was a mess, shattered instruments, exposed wiring, and in the pilot's seat, still strapped in, was a human, alive. I could tell from the shallow rise and fall of her chest. Her helmet was cracked, blood matted her hair on one side. Her flight suit was torn, revealing burns along her left arm. She was young, maybe mid-20s by human standards. Dark skin, darker hair. Her name was stenciled on her suit, VOSSM. I stood there for a long moment, just watching her breathe. I could leave, should leave, let her die here in the wreckage of her own making. After all, her people had done the same to mine, had shown no mercy, no hesitation, just cold, calculated extermination. But then I thought about my brother. Kelris had been a soldier, good one too, disciplined, loyal, everything the Thaleri military valued, until the day he found a wounded human civilian during a raid and chose to help instead of kill. They executed him for it, called it treason. Made an example. I was 17 when I watched them put a plasma round through his skull. I looked at the human woman, Voss, and wondered if this was how it started for Kelris. This moment of hesitation, this stupid, dangerous impulse to see a person instead of an enemy. Her eyes opened, not fully, just a flutter, unfocused. But she saw me. I could tell from the way her pupils tried to track my movement. She tried to speak, failed. Her lips moved soundlessly. I made my decision. "Don't move," I said in human English. My translator implant made the words come out rough but comprehensible. "You're injured. I'm going to get you out." She didn't respond. Probably couldn't. But her eyes stayed on me as I worked. Getting her out took 20 minutes. The harness was jammed. I had to cut through it with my medical laser. Her left leg was pinned under part of the console. Had to pry that free carefully to avoid making the injuries worse. She passed out twice during the extraction. Probably for the best. The pain would have been significant. When I finally pulled her free and laid her on a relatively flat section of rubble, I got my first good look at the damage. Compound fracture in the left tibia. Severe burns on the arm and shoulder. Possible internal bleeding. Concussion. Dehydration. Survivable, maybe, with treatment. I pulled out my medical kit, what remained of it. Most of my supplies were designed for Thaleri physiology, but the basics worked on humans too. Coagulants, antibiotics, pain suppressors. I worked quickly, set the leg as best I could with a portable stabilizer, cleaned and dressed the burns, administered what medications I had that wouldn't kill her. The whole time, the ash kept falling, settling on her face, on my hands, on the ruins around us. When I finished, I sat back and looked at what I'd done. I'd saved a human, the enemy, the species that had killed my world. And I had no idea why. The storm hit an hour later. Not a natural storm, those didn't exist anymore in the irradiated zones. This was an ash storm. Winds that picked up all that grey powder and turned the air into a choking fog that could strip skin if you weren't protected. I couldn't leave Voss out in the open. She'd die in minutes. I hauled her up, draping her arm over my shoulders, and half-dragged, half-carried her through the ruins. My suit's scanner showed a structure nearby that still had partial integrity. An old maintenance bunker, maybe. Or a storage facility. Hard to tell with everything collapsed and buried. The entrance was blocked. Took me 15 minutes to clear enough debris to squeeze through. The space inside was small, maybe 20 feet across, and dark except for the dim emergency lighting that somehow still functioned on failing power cells. But it was shelter. I laid Voss on the floor, propped her up against the wall, and collapsed beside her. My muscles burned. My lungs ached. Even with the suit's filtration, I could taste the ash in my mouth. Outside, the wind howled. The sound was almost peaceful, like the world itself was mourning. I checked Voss's vitals. Stable, barely. She'd need more treatment, better supplies, but she'd live through the night. I pulled off my helmet and let my head fall back against the cold metal wall. What was I doing? I'd lost everything, my home, my family, my purpose. I should have been searching for other Thaleri survivors, should have been trying to regroup, rebuild, find some meaning in the ashes. Instead, I was sitting in a bunker with an unconscious human, watching her breathe, and wondering if Kelris had felt this same confused emptiness when he made his choice. "You're an idiot," I muttered to myself. The wind answered with another howl. I closed my eyes and tried not to think about what morning would bring. She woke at dawn. I say dawn, but the sky never really lightened anymore, just went from black to grey. The storm had passed, leaving everything coated in a fresh layer of ash. I heard her gasp, that sharp intake of breath that meant pain and confusion and fear all at once. I was sitting across the bunker, eating a ration bar that tasted like compressed cardboard. I didn't move, just watched her. Voss blinked several times, her eyes adjusting to the dim light. When she saw me, she froze. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said, in a voice rough from disuse, "You're Thaleri." "Yes." "You saved me." "Yes." "Why?" I took another bite of the ration bar, chewed slowly, swallowed. I'm still trying to figure that out. She looked down at herself, at the bandages, the stabilized leg, the medical wrappings that probably saved her life. The war, she started, then stopped, swallowed, tried again. The war is over, isn't it? So they say. Then why? Why save you? I told you. I don't know. I set down the ration bar. Maybe I'm tired of watching people die. Maybe I'm trying to prove I'm better than your species. Maybe I'm just a fool. Voss flinched at the bitterness in my voice. I didn't start the war, she said quietly. Neither did I. But we're both here anyway. Silence. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. The war isn't over. I stared at her. What? The war. It's not over. It's... She closed her eyes, pain etched across her face. Not physical pain. Something deeper. There's one more operation. Final cleansing, they called it. Orbital strike on all remaining Thaleri positions. They launched it 3 days ago. The world tilted. That's impossible. The treaty... There is no treaty. Her voice cracked. There was never going to be a treaty. Command decided total elimination was the only way to ensure peace. No survivors, no possibility of retaliation, just... She gestured weakly at the ruins around us. This, everywhere. I couldn't breathe. All this time I'd thought it was over. Thought we'd lost, but at least it was finished. Thought maybe somehow the scattered survivors could rebuild, find a way forward. But there were no scattered survivors, just targets waiting for the final blow. How long? My voice sounded strange, distant. Until the strike? Voss opened her eyes. I don't know. I was shot down during reconnaissance. Lost track of the timetable. Could be days. Could be hours. And you're telling me why? Because... She looked at me, and I saw something in her expression I didn't expect. Shame. Because I was flying that reconnaissance mission, mapping the last Thaleri positions for the strike coordinates, and I... She took a shaking breath. I didn't question it. Didn't think about what it meant, just followed orders, like a good soldier. Her hands were trembling. I watched your cities burn from orbit, she continued, watched the plasma charges drop, watched everything turn to glass and ash, and I felt nothing, just checked off coordinates and moved to the next target. Tears started down her face. I'm a murderer, and I didn't even care. The bunker fell silent except for the sound of her crying. I should have felt satisfied, should have felt vindicated. Here was one of them, finally admitting what they'd done, finally carrying some of that guilt, but I just felt tired. We all followed orders, I said quietly. That's what war is. Organized atrocity with official permission. That's not an excuse. No, but it's an explanation. I stood up, joints aching. Can you walk? She looked confused. I don't. Why? Because sitting here waiting to die seems pointless. I extended my hand. Come on. She stared at my hand for a long moment. Then, slowly, she took it. I pulled her up. She swayed, favoring her injured leg, but stayed standing. Where are we going? She asked. I don't know yet, but anywhere is better than here. We left the bunker and stepped back into the grey world. The ash was already falling again, soft and relentless. And somewhere above us, beyond the clouds and the atmosphere and the endless dark, humanity's final judgment was coming. But for now, we just walked. 2 enemies, 2 survivors, 2 people trying to figure out what came after the end. We made it 3 kilometers before Voss collapsed. I caught her before she hit the ground, but barely. She was heavier than she looked, or I was weaker than I wanted to admit. Probably both. I'm fine, she gasped, even as her face went pale. "Just need a minute." "You need a week and a proper medical facility. Unfortunately, we have neither." I lowered her to sit on a chunk of broken concrete. "Rest. Drink." I handed her my water ration. She hesitated, then took it. Drank slowly. Her hands were still shaking. While she recovered, I scanned the horizon. The ruins stretched in every direction, broken and silent. No movement, no life, just the eternal ash and the wind that never stopped. We were completely alone. I should have felt relieved. Alone meant safe, meant no complications, but instead I felt something else, something that made my chest tight. Isolation, complete and absolute. I was the last Theleri I'd seen in weeks. Voss was the first human, and now she was telling me that what remained of my people was about to be erased, that this ash-covered wasteland would be all that remained of our existence. "Tell me about your people," Voss said suddenly. I looked at her. "What? Your people? The Theleri? Tell me about them. Not the military, not the war, just who you were before." I almost refused, almost told her it was none of her business, that sharing stories wouldn't change anything. But then I thought about Kelris again, about how he'd seen a human and chosen compassion over orders, and I sat down beside her. "We were explorers," I said. "Originally, our homeworld was resource-poor, harsh, so we looked to the stars, became good at it. By the time humanity encountered us, we'd established 17 colony worlds across 4 systems." "That's impressive." It was survival. But yes, I picked up a handful of ash, let it sift through my fingers. We valued knowledge, discovery. Every Theleri child learned 3 languages and 2 sciences before adulthood. We built libraries that spanned continents, archives that preserved everything we learned. Past tense. Yes, past tense. The ash fell from my hand. Your people bombed the Grand Archive on the 2nd day of the war. 5,000 years of accumulated knowledge, gone in minutes. Voss was quiet for a moment. Then, "I'm sorry." "For what? You didn't launch that strike." "No, but someone like me did, following orders, not thinking about what they were destroying." She looked at me. "Does that make a difference? Whether it was me or someone else?" I didn't answer. "Tell me about your brother," she said. That made me turn. "How do you know about—" "You mentioned him. In the bunker, when you were treating my injuries. You were talking to yourself, said his name." I had no memory of that. But trauma did strange things to people. "Kelris," I said finally. "He was my older brother. Better than me at everything. Stronger, smarter, braver." I paused. "More compassionate." "What happened to him?" I told her. About the raid. About the human civilian. About Kelris's choice and the execution that followed. When I finished, Voss was crying again. Silently this time. Tears cutting tracks through the ash on her face. "He was right," she whispered. "Your brother. He was right to show mercy. He was executed for it. He was still right." We sat in silence, watching the ash fall. Then Voss said something that changed everything. "There's a communications relay, 40 kilometers north. Old military installation. If it's still functional, we could send a signal. Warn whatever Theleri survivors are still out there. Give them a chance to scatter before the strike." I looked at her. "That's treason, by your own people's definition." "I know. They'll execute you if they find out." "I know." She met my eyes. "But your brother showed mercy when it cost him everything. The least I can do is try to repay that debt, even if I'm centuries too late." I stared at this human woman, this enemy, and saw something I hadn't expected to see in anyone from her species. Honor. Not the military kind, not the propaganda kind, but real honor, the kind that cost something. "Can you walk 40 kilometers?" I asked. "I can try." "Then we leave at first light." She nodded. That night, we made camp in the shell of an old transport station. It still had partial walls and most of a roof, enough to keep the worst of the ash off. I divided my remaining rations between us. They weren't much, enough for maybe 3 more days if we stretched them. Voss ate slowly, chewing each bite like it was important, like she was memorizing the taste. "What will you do?" she asked. "After, if we manage to send the warning. What will you do?" "I don't know," the honest answer. "Find other Thaleri, if any survived. Try to rebuild. I trailed off. "I don't know." "You could come with me." I laughed. Couldn't help it. To where? A human world. They'd execute me on sight. Maybe. Or maybe. She looked at me. Maybe there are others like me, who are starting to question, who are tired of the killing, who want something different. That's naive. Probably. But what's the alternative? We all just wait to die? I didn't have an answer for that. We slept in shifts, or tried to. Every sound made us jump. Every gust of wind sounded like approaching footsteps. During my watch, I studied Voss while she slept. Her face was peaceful despite the injuries, despite everything she'd admitted, despite the weight she was carrying. She'd killed my people, helped orchestrate their extermination, and now she was trying to save what remained. Was that redemption? Or just guilt trying to buy forgiveness it didn't deserve? I didn't know. All I knew was that Kelris would have helped her, would have seen this moment and chosen mercy. So I would too, even if it killed me, even if it meant nothing. Because maybe, just maybe, that's what being better than the war meant. Choosing to be human, even when you weren't human at all. The journey to the relay station took 4 days. It should have taken 2, but Voss's injuries slowed us down and we had to detour around radiation hot zones that would have killed us both. We moved through the ruins like ghosts, spoke only when necessary, conserved energy, conserved resources, conserved hope. On the 2nd day, we ran out of water. I found a contaminated stream in what used to be a park. The radiation levels were high, but not immediately lethal. We filtered it through my suit's purification system. It tasted like metal and death. We drank it anyway. On the 3rd day, Voss's leg became infected. I could see it in the way she moved, the way she favored the limb, the way her face went tight with pain every few steps. That night, I redressed the wound with the last of my medical supplies. The infection was spreading, not fast, but steady. Without proper antibiotics, it would kill her in a week, maybe less. "We need to move faster," she said through gritted teeth. "You can barely walk." "Then carry me. We don't have time for this. If I carry you, I can't defend us if we run into trouble." "There's no one left to run into." She looked at me with fever-bright eyes. "That's the point, isn't it? We're alone, the last ones standing. So we either make it to that relay, or we die trying. Either way, sitting here won't change anything." She was right, and I hated that she was right. So I fashioned a makeshift crutch from a piece of rebar and wrapped fabric. It wasn't good, but it helped. We kept moving. On the 4th day, we found the relay station, or what remained of it. The installation had been military, a communications hub designed to coordinate orbital and ground forces. Now, it was mostly rubble. The main tower had collapsed. Most of the buildings were burned out, but the backup systems were underground, and underground might still be functional. There, Voss pointed to a bunker entrance half buried in debris. That's the access point. If we can get inside, reach the control room. If it still works, she agreed. We spent an hour clearing the entrance. My hands bled, my muscles screamed. But eventually, we exposed the door. It was sealed, locked down tight. Emergency protocols from when the facility was abandoned. I pulled out my override key, a tool every Thaleri medic carried for emergency facility access. It wasn't designed for human military systems, but both our species used similar electromagnetic locking mechanisms. It took 3 tries, but the lock clicked open. The door hissed, then slowly ground open on damaged hydraulics. Beyond was darkness. "Stay close," I said. We descended into the facility. Emergency lighting flickered on as we moved, triggered by motion sensors that somehow still functioned. The corridor was narrow, metal, and sterile, like a tomb. The control room was 3 levels down. It was intact, mostly. The consoles were dusty and dark, but when I activated the emergency power, they hummed to life. Status displays flickered. System diagnostics ran automatically. "Is it functional?" Voss asked, leaning heavily against a console. I checked the readouts. "Communications array is damaged, 57% functionality. But," I pulled up the transmission protocols. "Yes, we can send a signal. Limited range, but enough to reach the nearest Thaleri emergency channels." "How long?" "To compose and send?" 10 minutes, maybe less." Voss nodded. Then she pulled out her identification tags. Military issue, her name, rank, serial number stamped in metal. She held them out to me. "What's this?" I asked. "Proof that this came from a human source, that it's not a trap." She placed them in my hand. "Include my identification codes in the transmission. Let your people know. Let them know one of us tried to make it right." I stared at the tags. They were warm from her body heat. "This will end your life," I said, "when they trace this signal back." "I know." She smiled weakly. "But maybe that's okay. Maybe that's what justice looks like." I wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she didn't have to do this, that there were other ways, but I couldn't think of any. So I turned to the console and began composing the message. Emergency transmission, priority alpha. To all Thaleri emergency channels from Field Medic Ren, Colony Division 7. This is an urgent warning to all surviving Thaleri forces. The human military is executing a final orbital strike protocol targeting all remaining Thaleri positions. Timeline unknown but imminent. Recommended action, immediate dispersal, and communications blackout. This information comes from a human source. Pilot M. Voss, serial number TH554722208. She risked everything to deliver this warning. Show mercy where we were shown none. That is the only way we survive. I read it back to Voss. She nodded. "Send it," she said. My hand hovered over the transmission key. This was it, the moment that would define what came next. Either this warning reached someone, and a handful of Thaleri survived, or it didn't, and we'd just announced our position for nothing. Either way, there was no going back. I pressed the key. The console beeped, the message uploaded. The antenna arrays activated, routing the signal through damaged pathways, searching for any functioning relays. 10 seconds passed, 20, 30. Then, transmission sent, acknowledgement pending. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "It's done," I said. Voss smiled. "Good, that's good." Then the alarms started. Red lights flooded the control room. A klaxon blared. The main display showed multiple alerts. Incoming fire. Orbital bombardment detected. Impact in 90 seconds. I stared at the screen, not understanding. Then the terrible truth hit me. Our transmission had been detected, and someone, somewhere, had decided we were a threat worth eliminating. 90 seconds, Voss said quietly. Not much time. I looked at her. We need to run. Now. There might be a shelter protocol. We won't make it. She was calm, too calm. Not with my leg, not in 90 seconds. Then I'll carry you. Ran. She took my hand. It's okay. We did it. We warned them. Whatever happens now, we did the right thing. That's not enough. It has to be. 60 seconds. I pulled her toward the exit anyway, couldn't accept it. Couldn't just stand there and wait for death. We made it to the corridor, started climbing the stairs. 40 seconds. Voss's leg gave out. She fell. I caught her, tried to haul her up. Leave me, she gasped. Save yourself. No. Rain dash. No. I pulled her up, got her arm around my shoulders. We do this together or not at all. 20 seconds. We reached the second level. The building was shaking, dust falling from the ceiling. The sound of approaching destruction like thunder that never stopped. 10 seconds. We weren't going to make it. I knew it. Voss knew it. But we kept climbing anyway, because sometimes all you can do is try, even when trying isn't enough, even when the ending is already written. You try anyway. That's what makes you human, or Thaleri, or whatever you are. You try. 5 seconds. We reached the surface level, saw daylight through the bunker entrance. 3 seconds. I pulled Voss toward the light. In those final moments, I thought of Kelris, of his choice, of the mercy that cost him everything, and I understood. 2 seconds. This was what it meant, to choose compassion over hate, to see a person instead of an enemy, to be better than the war that destroyed us. 1 second. I squeezed Voss's hand. She squeezed back. We almost made it. The world turned white. In my last moment of consciousness, I felt no regret. I'd saved a life, warned my people, chosen mercy when hate would have been easier, just like Kelris. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. The light consumed us, and I held on to one final thought. Show mercy where we were shown none. That is the only way we survive, not just as Thaleri or humans, but as people, as beings worthy of the stars we'd reached for, as something better than the wars we fought. The ash would keep falling on Halven Reach. The ruins would remain. The wounds would scar the galaxy for generations. But somewhere in that transmission, my words would live on, my choice, Kelris's legacy, and maybe, just maybe, someone would hear. Someone would understand. Someone would choose mercy. Even when it cost everything, especially when it cost everything. That's what I chose to believe as the light took me. That we'd planted a seed in the ashes, and someday, somehow, it would grow. The end came not with darkness, but with light, and in that light I found peace for Kelris, for mercy, for what we could have been. The ash falls on Halven Reach. It always will, but in the ruins, something remains. A message, a choice, a truth that refuses to die. Show mercy where we were shown none. That is the only way we survive.